All right, and welcome to UML Operator, the channel that covers UML, the Unified Modeling Language, CASE, Computer-Aided Software Engineering, and Visual Delivery. Reporting is a very broad subject area, and will take a lot of time to cover. I have a playlist out there on reporting in Sparx. Today's subject could literally take hours. It's a full day class that I've given. And we're just going to touch on it in part one. I'm not sure how many parts we're going to take in this series, but let's get started in this one. All right, we're starting with our toy project. I just love that term, so I'm going to be using it. This is our fictitious delivery project around a fictitious company called Arco. And the project is around knowledge management systems. And today's subject, we're going to get into reporting. So you've learned how to create navigation cells. We're able to get into project management areas and maintain manageability of our documentation, our analytics, our charts, and so on. But today we're going to focus on project reports, right? And everything that's involved in a basic project. Now let's start out with the phases in a project. Now this is a typical industry layout where you've got a planning phase, design phase, development, testing, deployment, maintenance, and most importantly, financial and managerial reports that go actually across these phases. Let's go ahead and right click in here and let's look at these elements from a specification view. So when we're looking at this, you can see in the planning phase, we've got five reports that are necessary for the planning phase. And there's certainly more than five. I have 18, but these are the ones we're going to start out in this area. So you can take screenshots along the way. Design phase, you have your system architecture, sometimes referred to as your solution architecture report. It's basically a high-level design, as it says here, including components, modules, building blocks, and how they're connected, and interact. So if you have a project that's touching on user experience, you have a UI UX design report. Of course, you're talking about data, your own intelligence. You have a data design that's relevant to this. And we have a technical specification, which provides the blueprints for developers. It's like the handoff from solution approach to high-level design to detailed design as the developers are moving into the design and implementation of software, which then gets us into the development phase. And in here, from a managerial perspective, you've got project reports, which track the development life cycles, any issues, risks, and the mitigation required. Of course, we have version control and change log. That sometimes happens quite a bit over an area. You've got your unit test results from your developers. This is only one part of a multi-part testing strategy. You have your testing phase, which includes your test plan, your test execution report, your defect bug report. The reason I'm stumbling over this is we're going through a project right now that probably could have done a little bit better. The shop could have done a little bit better in their test plan. And they were missing their execution report, so we were having trouble tracking the execution of test results, pass, fail, deferred, and so on. And so I'm tripping a little bit here because we were up late. But anyways, moving on, performance testing report, very important. A lot of the performance testing is starting at the very beginning of the development lifecycle, and certainly becomes more critical when you're getting into integration testing and system testing and deployment, right? Speaking about deployment, you have your deployment phase. And in your deployment phase, you have your deployment plan, which may be done way up front as we're doing solutioning and design. Yeah, and user training report. Training is something that a lot of shops miss. And training is mission critical for everyone. Training the project stakeholders on the methodologies you're using, training the developers that may be contractors coming in and understand the culture, the governance of a particular shop, all the way down to user training from your agents to your customers. And then you have a go live report, which is a readiness. That's your final report before you get into release. And then you have your maintenance phase. These maintenance logs actually can start way in the beginning because when we're talking about defects and bug fixes and so on, there could be bugs in requirements. There could be bugs in simulations and prototypes, all the way, of course, code. And then you have your customer feedback. Now, customer is an interesting noun in this case because the customer could be the user. The user could be the customer. The user could be an agent or any one of the other almost 50 roles in a large company. And so customer, I usually use that interchangeably with user feedback, right? And then financial and managerial reports. These are mission critical. You've got your budget report up front. You have your resource utilization report, which we're going to talk about a little bit. You have your status report, which is iterative. And, if you're having daily calls, weekly calls, etc., where the team is getting together for, the project health, progress, pending risks and issues for all stakeholders and so on. And then my favorite report is postmortem, project closure report. Now, this one's interesting because I refer to this as causal analysis. And causal analysis actually starts very beginning of the project. You set up the template you're going to use. Everyone agrees what they're going to be measuring. And then you're constantly visiting your causal analysis report all the way up to the closing of the project. So postmortem, the way that the industry tags this one is, well, it's after the project closes. It's after a phase closes. It's after anything closes that needs to be measured. We need to collect lessons learned as quickly as possible so that we can improve as we're moving through our delivery life cycles. Now you can see that I've tagged all of these from a priorities perspective. All of these are high. And like I said, I have many other reports that may not be a high priority for different companies, their development shops and clients. So these are the ones that are definitely necessary as we're going through the project delivery. So what I want to do is I want to take these elements right here, and I want to trace them to the Sparx templates. Now, Sparx has quite a few templates. If we hit the space bar here, we go down to documents. Let's just bring in, just the document is fine. So when you're opening a document, you all have seen this maybe before, you have a selection here. These are my custom reports, but Sparx has canned templates, right? And there are several that are in here. And then there's a bunch of other model-driven generator. These are plugins into UML 2X tools into Sparx. You got your Babak, you all the way down to your TOGAF and more. All right. So we're only going to be focused on the Sparx system templates in the next part. Now I've taken the industry standard reports that we should be focused on. You've already seen those in the specification view. So just to remind you, we're able to look at elements from a specification perspective. And I've taken these and I've taken all of the Sparx canned templates. Let's just look at the first one, requirements approval. So when we go into it, they give you a basic template already formed for you where you can come in here and you can populate it with your own data, or you can customize it. We're not going to talk about that today. That's in a previous video and I may do more on it. Then they have templates where you can insert your own logo that are formed for you, gives you your change logs, distribution, table of content, and then it helps you along by defining, well, what is the introduction, scope, timeline estimate, and so on as you're going forward. So it does this for you. Now you can certainly follow the layout that they provide for you when you're doing this, or in this example, we have resource report right here. We changed a little bit. We've got the change log in here, distribution, But when we're coming down in here, we might take a different approach to enter the topics that you can see here. So this is a typical resource plan in a project for this fictitious project that we're implementing. Now, these realization associations that are here from the industry planning approach, and you may have your own report planning approach or strategy, to the canned Sparx reports. It's not all inclusive, but just for this demonstration, let's go to layout. We're going to turn on relationships. So when we select something, we can see that, well, and let's get notes up here so you can see what the nouns and verbs are for such requiring. Matter of fact, let me just grab these notes, this note window, and just drag it up here. So you can see that in the planning phase, you have your project proposal, your feasibility, your requirement specification, risk, and so on. So in this particular case, we have realizing your risk plan. And let's just go ahead and double click that. So the risk plan, basically lay it out. They give you a template, tell you how to go through it and implement your particular risk plan. Your requirements approval, your training plan, which is mission critical. Speaking about mission, here's your mission vision, and this can come from the company and then be applicable to the project. Sparx gives you some helper to get started. Now, typically when we go into a shop, they already have a mission vision, a mission plan, mission statement, and so on that we just utilize within our mission vision so that all the stakeholders understand what's taking place. Training plan, your training plan, let's go ahead and open it up here. So you can see they provide you something to get started. You may have your own training plan, but it gives you direction on, defining the objectives, the scope, the strategy, the curriculum that you're going to be using. Could be UML operator, playlist, or channel with specific videos, training schedules for your team. This one's critical. You're not going to do every one at once. You might do a couple at a time. You might feel the water for the pricing that you may be paying for training, and train one, get some lead trainers to help train the rest of your shop, and work out through your contractual agreements with whoever your training facility is, all right? And then you're planning for training, when to train, what to train on, and then how to verify that everyone is properly trained. All right, I want to go back to my common layout, reorganize things. So I pulled notes out, get everything back where I want it to be. There we go. We don't need this document open. We're going to go ahead and close it, and we're going to turn filtering off. All right. So you can see I have the Sparx templates that are here. You can basically bring one up and go into a release plan, for example. You can come in, insert your own logo. Let's just link a logo. You can embed a picture in here, go out to where your logo is, and then add that into your artifact, and it'll always be there. And you can create a library where you can reuse these blank templates as you're getting started. You may want to come in here when you're doing your own templates and extending the templates that Sparx has provided, and put in your own directions, your instructions for each section and what you expect, and maybe even some links to example best-in-class reports that are in your organization. Now, this is the main cover page for this particular project. In it, you have project management. We have a link to reporting. So you have your document repository. And in here, you have your dashboards, which are used in your reports, and the project-specific reports. So these are the mandatory reports for any project using the phase strategy that we discussed earlier. So you have your various reports that are here. We already looked at the resource plan. You may have a feasibility study. This is one that I did for this fictitious company. And they're already laid out and need to be populated in a particular order. And again, it's not waterfall, it's iterative. You may start here with your feasibility study, and then you go into your project proposal report in here that you're going to use during kickoff. You get into your resource plan, and then you start doing requirements. This is blank right now, But an example of a requirements artifact is if we go back to the main cover page and we go into requirements management, we have a model report that's here that includes all of the requirements, and we can hit function key 8 while we've selected this model element. You'll learn about this in the next part 2, maybe even part 3 of this series. So we've already created one. We're just going to select view. So these are the current requirements that we have defined in this project. And there's quite a few that are here. We're certainly not done yet, but this is the start of requirement specification report that's going to be used. All right. Whether you're talking about your business requirements, which includes some functional requirements, or your functional requirements as you're working through your delivery. All right, we're going to wrap up part 1 of this series right now. And in our next part, and even talk a little bit about part 3, we're going to dive down a little bit deeper into this subject, into your reporting strategy. We're going to talk about how to constrain reports, because not everyone's going to have access. You get down into financial and managerial reports. Not everyone's going to have access to them. But I really want to get to postmortem, or what I refer to as causal analysis, when that should start and how it should end. And, moving improvements, process improvements, and so on forward to your next project. So we've got a lot to cover. I'm going to try to do this in 3 parts, but it might take a 4th and a 5th. We'll see. All right. So until that next episode, thanks very much for watching. Happy modeling.